Hi everybody, welcome to Kids Crafternoon with Christina. Today we're going to be making these really cute little pincushion rings. They are just something that you can wear and use if you want to. I kind of never do because I always think I'm going to jab myself in the eye with a pin. But they're kind of cute. They're really good for gifts too, and they're really easy to make. So I'll show you how to make these. Before we do that, I'm going to show you the supplies that we're going to need. You're going to need a ring base, and these ring bases are they're adjustable. You can get them at any craft store. They're pretty easy to find. You're also going to need fabric for your ring. You're going to need some embroidery floss to wrap your ring, just whatever colors you want. You're going to need two different kinds of needles. You're just going to need a regular needle to gather up the ring, but then you're going to need an embroidery needle to thread with embroidery floss and then wrap it to kind of make it into the sections, which I'll show you how to do. Oh, sorry, and you need some stuffing too. But we're going to talk about needles for just a second. I pulled these needles. When you use embroidery floss is pretty thick. You need a needle that has a big eye and something that is pretty pointy too. I recommend either these embroidery needles or these chenille needles. Either of these needles will work really well. Sometimes it's a little tricky to get the embroidery floss in the eye of the needle. So if you're having a hard time, you might want to consider getting one of these needle threaders, because this is just a little wire that kind of squishes down into the eye of the needle and pops the embroidery floss through. If it's something that you're really struggling with, these come in super handy. You're going to need some fabric scissors and some paper scissors. You're going to need glass or something that is about 2 inches in diameter for the pattern for the piece of fabric, some little snips, and that's all you're going to need for this project. This is how you do it. So the first thing you're going to do is get your 2-inch diameter circle. I'm just going to use the bottom of this glass. I'm going to put it on a piece of plain paper. I don't think I mentioned that before, but you are going to need a pencil or a pen and just a plain piece of paper. I'm going to just draw my circle around, and when you do this, you want to make sure that you're not doing it in the middle of the paper, just so that you have extra paper. It's just kind of wasteful to do it in the middle. You'll have extra paper here if you don't trace it in the middle. And you're also going to do that same thing with the fabric too, which I will show you. I'm going to just quickly cut this out. It doesn't have to be a perfect circle by any means, because all of the edges of the circle are going to get gathered up and tucked in. Not to worry that if it's not perfect. Now I have my circle, and I'm gonna have I have my piece of fabric for my ring, and I'm gonna put that in the corner as well. Again, you don't wanna put it in the middle. I'm just gonna cut it out of the corner, so then I have all this extra for something else. I'm gonna take just a straight pin and pop it through the middle of my circle just to hold it onto the paper. And then I'm gonna roughly cut out just the corner so it makes it a lot easier to cut that out. I'm sure you already know this, but when you cut, you're actually turning the fabric and the pattern. You're not turning your scissors. You're keeping your scissors kind of in the same angle, just turning your fabric and your pattern. All right, so that's all cut out. I'm gonna take my pin out, and now I'm gonna gather this circle up. I have just a regular needle with some regular thread. I threaded it, and then I have a double strand of thread just so it's stronger. I'm gonna tie a knot in the end of my thread, just like that, just so my thread doesn't pull through. And I'm gonna do a running stitch all the way around the circumference of that circle, probably about 1/4 of an inch from the edge. I'm just gonna eyeball it to try to make it about 1/4 of an inch from the edge, but again, good enough is good enough. All these edges are going to be on the bottom of your pincushion ring. It's not even gonna show. I sewed all the way around, and I kind of pulled my thread, and it starts to draw up already. I'm gonna just do my last stitch and go to the underneath side. So I start from the underneath and end from the underneath, and when I pull my thread, see how that kind of just pulls it all together. I can take my little gathers and spread them out like that. I'm gonna gather it up quite a bit, but not all the way, because at this point I want to put some stuffing in there. You only need the tiniest bit of stuffing. Sometimes when I make these, I put a lot of stuffing in them because I'm feeling like, I don't know, I want them to be a little fatter or a little less stuffing. You can kind of decide for yourself. You don't have to use stuffing. You could use a scrap of fabric, you could use roving, you could use kind of anything just to put in there. I just have a little bit of polyfill here. I'm just going to take about that much and pop it in there Sometimes it's a little slippery. When I'm putting in the first amount of stuffing, sometimes I think, well, I just grabbed way too much, so I need to pull some out like that. Put some in there and then just take your fingers and start pushing it in there and pulling that thread so the stuffing stays in there. Let's see. I want to make this a tiny bit fatter. A little bit goes a long way. That's a good amount. Happy with that. That's not a perfect round circle, but that's okay. That's why we end up wrapping. I still have my thread on there. Now I'm just going to poke my needle through the bottom of it, kind of where I gathered it up, and I'm going to just take a few stitches so that the gathered up part really closes up and the stuffing can't come out. I'm just going across, doing some big stitches. And again, this is going to be glued down. Doesn't have to look pretty. We're really only looking at the top part. Look at how kind of like messy and weird that looks. It's kind of a janky looking circle, but that's why we wrap it and it'll make it look much prettier. That's pretty much tied off. I'm gonna take one last stitch, go through my loop, and do that twice, just so those stitches hold, and snip my thread. Now we need to wrap it. I like to have one strand of embroidery floss for this. I threaded my embroidery needles. This has a bigger eye, so my embroidery floss can go through. I'm using all 6 strands of embroidery floss because I like it to really show. You could use less embroidery floss. You could split your strand of embroidery floss in case if you want it to be a little more subtle. I have all 6 strands and I'm gonna work with one strand. I'm not doubling it is what I'm saying. I'm also gonna tie a knot in the end of that so that doesn't pull through. I'm gonna go poke it from the bottom and I'm gonna try and come up pretty much in the middle. That's pretty middle-ish, and pull my embroidery floss all the way through. Now I'm gonna wrap it on one side, go through the middle again. You're wrapping it and coming up through the middle. I like to pull it kind of tight because that's what's gonna make you have these kind of lobe things. It makes it look kind of like a little flower. Again, one other side, pull it through the middle, pull it tight. So see, when I pull it tight, it kind of makes it kind of look like a flower petal. So now I'm gonna go across, and again, come from the bottom to the middle. And you can always move this around if you think it's not in the exact right spot. Scooch some of that fabric over there, pull it tight. Yeah, that's looking cute. And you can wrap this as much as you want to. It's just however you think it looks good. I usually do a cross like this. I've got 4 sections like that, and then I'm gonna separate each of the 4 sections in half. I start with my 4 sections first, and then I'm gonna split those each in half. That's my last lobe. I came up through the middle. I'm gonna go back down through the middle to the bottom, pull my embroidery floss through, and just tie it off. I'm just gonna do one loop to tie it off because this is gonna get glued onto the ring base, so the glue will hold it all down too. I'm just gonna pull and clip my embroidery floss off of there. And there's my little pincushion ring. Now, all I'm gonna do is hot glue that to my ring base. And I forgot to tell you that you do need hot glue too. Hot glue or just like regular fabric glue will work. You might wanna have some help from an adult. Now all I have to do is put a drop of hot glue on my ring base. Be careful. I burned myself millions of times on hot glue. I'm just gonna take my pincushion and gently set it on my ring base, kind of centering it on the ring base. There it is. She's all done. Isn't that cute? So you can stick some pins in it if you want to, or just wear it as a pincushion.